Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today to tune into our podcast, Canal Days, what life was like in the industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I'm your host, Carrie, and joining me is co-host and local historian, business owner Robert Komuth. He is the founder and creator of successful local business, Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, which originally started off in Holyoke and has expanded to surrounding communities throughout Massachusetts. The communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. And his tours focus on historical sites such as the churches, cemeteries, parks, and reservoirs, as well as canals, houses, and more. And you can find tour schedule as well as podcasts and video series on his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And to book private tours, you can also do that on there as well. So join us for our episode today on Mount Hope Cemetery, located in Belchertown, Massachusetts. So Robert, describe where the cemetery is located within Belchertown.
It's located on Route 9, and it's right off the Commons. So Belchertown Commons is very obvious. It has two churches along there, actually three, count the Catholic one. And Town Hall is at one end, and it's a busy place. But down a little lane there's another Congregational church, very tall and white, and across the social center. And then between that you find finally the Mount Hope Cemetery. And a good question is maybe about its history and why is it even there, what style it has. So we're going to talk about these things, including the highlights, why there's a lot of family plots around, and then how does the cemetery compare to other cemeteries within Belchertown.
And can you tell us about some of the highlights?
Some of the highlights are there's a lot of family plots with curbing, and in the front you have most of the old burials. It's a large rectangular cemetery in front, but if you go to the back left and a little downhill, there's another cemetery that's also Mount Hope, but it's more modern stones. There's also a tomb within the middle of the old part, and that's where during the winter they would hold the burials of people who died during the winter months, and then late March or early April they would bury all the burials. You know, in a small place like Belchertown used to be, which might have had 1,000 people in 1900, there'd only be like 5 burials during winter, and so it wasn't too much, and it's a very small tomb. And now another great question you may come up with is, what style of cemetery is this? And very strangely enough, it's a rectangular one with the new part back, also rectangular. And it might be near a church, but it was put in the year 1846. So it's not a churchyard cemetery. And it's not a rural or garden cemetery either, because there's no curves to it. And there's no spectacular areas of flowers and bushes. And it's not a lawn cemetery because they didn't come around to 1855. And it's not even a family cemetery, because that would be very small. Now, around Belchertown, which is very big geographically, you find many of these styles. But it's the last kind, it's a neighborhood cemetery. Why you put in neighborhood cemeteries right in the middle of town? Well, Belchertown, all its cemeteries were out in the outskirts of Belchertown. There was none right in the center. One closest to the center is the oldest one, the South Cemetery. But that's a mile down the road. And so they finally built this neighborhood cemetery. And it's very big. It's the biggest neighborhood cemetery I've ever seen. And that's because the South Cemetery was so far away. And it was starting to get built up, filled, until they had addition in the back. So Mount Hope Cemetery is a very large neighborhood cemetery.
And really quick, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to sign up for any various tours or find out more information, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the sites, our 2025 tour schedule, or book a private tour. And you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And so getting back to our interview, explain the vast amount of family plots.
Okay, good question. Why a neighborhood cemetery like this, 1846 origin, has so many family plots? Well, I believe what happened is this. Belchertown was starting to grow around the 1840s, and the South Cemetery, which is the oldest cemetery in Belchertown, was getting filled up. People around Belchertown had the opportunity to build up their own family heritage, and so they bought out very large family plots. And what would happen is that a lot of family got in there, and so these big family plots with a lot of curbing around them, and this big obelisk of limestone and brownstone. And so we had the right timing, and it's right in the center of Belchertown. And so that's where everyone wanted to be. They didn't want to be in these tiny outskirts where there was a lot of cemeteries around Belchertown. But Belchertown is the third largest community in Massachusetts by geographic size. And so there's such a spread out. And for the first time, they had an opportunity, had it right in town, and the town is beginning to get very proud of themselves. Great concept, and it filled up very quickly.
And compared to other cemeteries within the town, is there anything significant or unique about this cemetery?
I would say what I just mentioned is certainly one of those. Now, how is it very different? So compare and contrast to those other ones. Well, you have to remember there's so many around Belchertown, and they even gained a couple of them when in the 1920s and 30s, Quabbin was being built. Enfield, another community that was lost due to the Quabbin, had to give up a couple of their cemeteries, and they gained a couple of lots, the Bacon Family Cemetery and the Blue Meadow Cemetery. Of course, their burials were taken out and moved into the Quabbin Cemetery, but those areas are now part of the Quabbin. Now, some of the other cemeteries around Belchertown, the Dwight Cemetery, for instance, it almost looks like a family cemetery. Same with the Evergreen. The Hillcrest is a little bigger. The Jinx is a family cemetery. Kimball, a small family cemetery. Lakeville, a cemetery that's close to the Amherst border. It looks like a neighborhood cemetery, but it's very hilly. The Liberty Cemetery is shares with East Old Cemetery in Ludlow. And then there's the Rural Cemetery, definitely a neighborhood cemetery way out next to Granby. Then the old-time town-wide burial area was the South Cemetery. The only one ever to be built after the Mount Hope Cemetery was the one associated with the Belchertown State School, and that was the Pine Grove Cemetery, which would change its name in the 1990s to Warner Pine Grove Memorial Cemetery. So, sure, the uniqueness is with all these family tombs and family plots, but it, by contrast, is very different from all the others. The only one that's somewhat similar is South Cemetery, and this is kind of an outgrowth of that South Cemetery.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tour and historical topic of your expertise. And we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And again, be sure to check out his website and also SoundCloud.com to find a large selection of other podcasts and videos. And New content is posted daily, and hope you join us again.